Hello everyone and welcome to Friday Night Countdown here from Raven's Nest Games in Marietta, Georgia. Rich Hagon, Brian David-Marshall with you, bringing you the highlights from Pro Tour Journey into Nix. BDM, it was won in the end by a Hall of Famer, Patrick Chapin.
Yeah, he solved the puzzle of how to be better than all of the 349 players who sat down to draft Journey into Nix for round one of the Pro Tour.
We'll take an in-depth look at the new draft environment later in the show, but of course it wasn't all about limited play.
No, absolutely not. Block Constructed made up 10 rounds out of the 16 rounds across the 2 days, and we got to see some really interesting takes on this format.
Inevitably, 8 decks were left standing for the Sunday showdown. Let's take a look.
Anticipating a field full of Elspeth Suns Champion, the 2 Channel Fireball super teams looked for a way to go over the top of Sylvan Caryatids and Coursers of Kruphix. Reed Duke, Jamie Park, and Josh Utter-Layton came into the top 8 with a black-blue-green control deck featuring Prognostic Sphinx, cast in the role of Elspeth Slayer. They brought their own planeswalkers to the fight in the form of Kiora the Crashing Wave and Ashiok Nightmare Weaver.
Another successful archetype was Red-Green Elspeth, brought by Yuichi Ichikawa of Japan and Andrea Mengucci of Italy. The power of this deck kept Mengucci in the King of the Hill seat in the feature match area throughout day 1. Sylvan Caryatid and Courser of Kruphix got you to Xenagos. From there, casting Police Crusher, Stormbreath Dragon and Elspeth Suns Champion to close games out in short order.
In a field hostile to aggressive decks, Pro Tour champion Stanislav Sivka showed his skill by piloting a red-white heroic deck all the way to the top 8. His streamlined aggro build featured 20 lands, 20 creatures, and 20 spells, curving out at 3 mana. The goal was to come out fast and launch the fleet, overwhelming opponents who needed time to set up with Scrylands.
Nam Sung-wook of South Korea used key cards from Journey into Nix to build his Constellation deck. Eidolon of Blossoms provided the card-drawing engine fueled by Brain Maggot, Herald of Torment, and Banishing Light. Oh, and yes, he also ran 3 Elspeth Suns Champion in the main deck. This take on the format positioned him as King of the Hill heading into the top 8.
But no one put Elspeth Suns Champion to better use than Pro Tour champion Patrick Chapin. His white-green-black mid-range deck got an early start with Fleecemane Lion, had a mid-game dominated by Brimaz, King of Oreskos, and finishers in the form of Pelucranos, World Eater, and Elspeth. The black spells Hero's Downfall and Silence the Believers spell doom for opposing creatures and planeswalkers. It also ensured that Chapin would begin Pro Tour Magic 2015 as King of the Hill, the reigning Pro Tour champion.
So those were our top 8 decks, but of course BDM, there was a lot more going on in the world of Block Constructed.
Yeah, absolutely, Rich. This is one of the most diverse metagames I've ever seen for Block Constructed at a Pro Tour. Here are some of the other cool decks we saw make their way through the tournament center.
Raphael Levy called his blue-black inspired deck GTA, short for Grand Theft Ashiok. He used the Planeswalker to steal creatures exiled from his opponent's library. With Springleaf Drum and Triton Tactics, he took full advantage of the inspired mechanic, using Daring Thief to steal creatures, King Makar the Gold Curse to exile them, and Painseer to draw himself extra cards. As an extra benefit, Levy even used the gold tokens from King Makar to activate the monstrosity ability of a stolen Stormbreath Dragon.
While many players used 1 or 2 planeswalkers, Andrew Beckstrom teamed a Johnny Mentor of Heroes with Elspeth Suns Champion and Kiora the Crashing Wave in his Bant deck. In addition to the usual mana ramp suspects, Kiora's follower ensured that Beckstrom's Prognostic Sphinxes were simply better than his opponents throughout the weekend.
Water is wet, Magic is awesome, and Shaheen Sarani is playing Esper Control. If you wanted to see the power of Scry, look no further than 14 temples in Sarani's mana base, some of which provided a colour of mana he didn't need in his deck. With 4 Prognostic Sphinx, Shaheen could effectively stack his entire deck by the end of the game. With only the 4 creatures and 5 planeswalkers in his deck, Sarani had more room than anyone to go kill, discard, no, counter, kill, and kill again. All right, BDM, we've looked at some of the decks, but Standard is coming into view, of course. Let's take a look at a kind of overall sense of what we've learned in the world of Constructed. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with a loyalty program?
No, you know what? When I start thinking about what to build in Constructed, I start looking at what Planeswalkers are available to me. And we saw all 5 Planeswalkers from the Theros Block in play in the top 8 of this Pro Tour.
So we open up with Ajani, Mentor of Heroes, out of Journey into Nyx. Twitter went mad when it looked like, on camera, we were going to see gaining 100 life.
I'm still really salty about that. I thought we were going to see it. I'm hoping someone at home does it because I really want that to happen.
Ashiok, Nightmare Weaver. That card was really puzzling because you turned up and looked at board states and there were creatures on the wrong side of the table that couldn't possibly have been cast to get there. Really screwy gameplay.
Yeah, Raph Levy had a deck that was stealing creatures all sorts of ways, not the least of which is Ashiok.
Slightly more straightforward was Xenagos.
Yeah, Xenagos, we saw an amazing play from Andrea Mengucci this weekend where he ultimated his Xenagos and flipped over 7 cards, putting 5 of them into play.
Kiora is a card that's delivered us yet another bit. Yeah, I know. But it's delivered us yet another piece of magic language. I love the way that we all describe it as bubbling a creature on that first ability.
Right, you assure that a creature won't be dealt damage, but it also can't deal damage to you or your planeswalkers. So it's in a nice little safe little bubble. Kiora was a really powerful card this weekend, and we saw a lot of Krakens entering the battlefield.
We certainly did. But for those of you who follow the storyline of the block, you know that Elspeth's your girl, and boy oh boy did she deliver throughout the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, multiple decks in the top 8 were all running Elspeth, Suns Champion, making tokens, making those tokens +2/+2 and flying, and destroying everything from Stormbreath Dragons to Pelucranoses. Just an incredibly powerful and versatile card.
Planeswalkers can sometimes cost quite a lot. Elspeth's 6 mana, of course. And if you're going to get to 6, well, you better make sure you get to 6. How did players go about building their decks to have Elspeth as an endgame, or Kiora?
7 of the 8 players playing on Sunday chose to use 4 copies of Sylvan Caryatid alongside 4 copies of Courser of Kruphix.
Right, so that's giving you mana acceleration out of the Caryatid, and then life gain, more and more lands coming into play off the Courser.
And a not inconsiderable amount of toughness to bog down the ground and protect your planeswalkers from, you know, pesky creatures on the other side of the table trying to attack them.
Can you recall a Pro Tour where the landscape has been so low power, high toughness heavy on battlefields?
No, and I think a large part of that again was Elspeth, and you know, people were really looking for ways to attack Elspeth that did not involve going through a Courser of Kruphix.
All right, so if you were going to try and deal with that, what were the tools?
I mean, the tool that all the super teams arrived at was Prognostic Sphinx. It's one of the breakout cards of this tournament. It flies. It has 3 power, which is so crucial. When you think about all the other bombs that are out there that are 4 power higher, they all die to the second ability of Elspeth.
Right. And
let me tell you something. When you scry 3, your opponent sinks in their chair. You know, you get to like look through the top of your deck, find the best out of 3 cards and put it on top and draw that card next turn. Unbelievable.
As a by the by, we did actually see someone worst fears and then make their opponent discard their entire hand to their own Prognostic Sphinx.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Prognostic Sphinx was such a big deal. There was a Danish team that brought Savage Surge, expecting a Prognostic Sphinx mirror.
And so you just go, make it +2/+2.
Attack your Prognostic Sphinx into their Prognostic Sphinx. What are you going to do? You can't, you know, they can't target your Prognostic Sphinx. Well, you untap it, give it +2/+2, and kill their Prognostic Sphinx.
Wow, that's a beating. Looking forward to seeing that at FNM as we move forward later in the year. All right, so what else was going on? A card that really you think of as a limited awesome and started to see play in Constructed this weekend, maybe again, looking forward towards Standard. Talk to me about Herald of Torment.
Yeah, Herald of Torment was another way, if you didn't have blue, and you were looking to go up and over to kill a Planeswalker, well, Herald of Torment for 5 mana gives your creature +3/+3 and fly. So it was a great way for you to, you know, take your Courser of Kruphix, make it a 5 power flyer, and attack an Elspeth, attack a Kiora, and you know, break that Planeswalker disadvantage.
As the block's gone on, enchantments have mattered more and more, and in Journey into Nyx, that's embodied in a card, a real marquee card like Eidolon of Blossoms.
Yeah, it's the card I was certainly most excited about brewing with when the new set came out. We saw a number of different decks really build themselves around this card drawing engine, and you know, Herald of Torment happens to be an enchantment, Boon Satyrs an enchantment, Banishing Light and Brain Maggot, which are just great cards that you want to play anyway, also enchantments that let you draw a card when they come into play if you have an Eidolon of Blossoms.
We talked about coursers and caryatids and sphinxes and heralds and eidolons and satyrs and maggots, all creatures. I like killing creatures. How did the removal stack up?
Well, you know what? There's not an inexpensive board sweeper like a Supreme Verdict or a Wrath of God in this block. And you know, so people really had to go to spot removal. So again, Banishing Light is a removal spell. Hero's Downfall is a terrific card. You know, kills a creature or can kill a planeswalker. It's a really powerful reason to be in black.
Was there a way, though, to remove more than one thing at once in a relatively painless fashion?
You know, it may not have been obvious to a lot of people coming into this tournament, but Silence the Believers really ended up filling that role of a board sweeper. You know, the games would go long. You have a lot of mana. Again, we go back to that Sylvan Caryatid and the Courser of Kruphix. You know, for 7 mana, you get to take down 2 creatures with a Silence the Believers. And, oh, is there a Herald of Torment bestowed on that? Is there a Boon Satyr bestowed on that? You get to take everything away. So that was a breakout card from this tournament as well.
And it was so clever for gameplay because you saw people sweating on, do I bestow this or do I get rid of it and just put it flat on the battlefield? And that idea of sort of going wide or going tall is something we're going to explore a little further as we head into our limited review. But that's a sense of the lessons coming out of Constructed as we head towards full standard coming out of Pro Tour Journey into Nyx. Here on Friday Night Countdown, it's time for some limited lessons. And BDM, we've been joined by Marshall Sutcliffe. Hey, Marshall.
Hey.
One big overall picture about what we learned out of Limited this weekend at Pro Tour Journey into Nyx.
So I had a chance to chat with both Ethan Fleischer from Wizards of the Coast R&D and also Ian Duke from the same. They told me that this format has gotten slower since Journey into Nyx has been introduced.
I think they're pretty much spot on there. Certainly anecdotally what we saw in those limited rounds. BDM, you had a chance to do deck techs and draft techs with people and chat all weekend long. What's your takeaway?
Yeah, I was in the tournament center with Pro Tour Theros champion Jeremy Desani, and we got to watch his draft, and he gave us a little bit of a run through of it. He really feels like the format has slowed down enough that he's able to draft cards like Font of Fertility and Market Festival fairly highly in the first pack of Journey into Nyx, and then be on the lookout for whatever powerful rares or uncommons in any color and be able to play them.
Right, so that's not just about ramping up to a high watermark in terms of 6-7 mana. It's actually going super deep in terms of 3 color. I mean, were people playing 4 and 5 color decks?
I mean, we've certainly seen that. I don't know that we saw that in any of the drafts that we covered, but you know, certainly 3 colors, which is definitely would be an exception in previous block draft formats in Theros.
Marshall, you are a real student of the limited game. When we see the overhead of matches, sometimes even if you don't know any of the cards, you can tell what format you're in just by what kind of stuff, the patterns on the battlefield. And in recent times, we've seen a lot of card on top of card on top of card on top of card. We call it Voltron because everything's being bestowed into one giant package. Did that continue here at Journey into Nyx?
No, it didn't. We call that battle cruiser magic, where you're stacking and stacking and stacking, and that was the thing that we got to do in these first 2 sets in the Theros block. But after chatting with the guys from R&D, I was told that the idea for Journey into Nyx was, look, we had our time, we had our fun, we made our huge creatures, it's time to go wide. Now we're going to see tokens flooding the board with swarms of creatures and enabling that type of effect, as opposed, you know, one of the things that we saw as a big change fundamentally in Journey into Nyx, there's no bestow creatures at common. Those were an absolute staple leading in, and now they're uncommon or rare only.
Right, and even the uncommon ones are kind of, a lot of times you want to bestow those onto your opponent's creatures, and I think something that also goes to that point is the mechanic in this set of Strive really rewards you for going wide. Absolutely. And rewards you for the game even going longer, right? Like it lets you suddenly pay 7 mana and, rouse the mob 3 times, or, make 3 Sphinx tokens with your Hour of Need at 9 mana.
Right, but you need multiple creatures on the board to make either of those work, and this set lets you do that.
We've talked Bestow, we've talked Strive. What we haven't talked BDM yet is the new mechanic Constellation. It felt to me like that was a super subtle mechanic that let you do an awful lot of very cool, but again, subtle things.
Well, I think when you see Constellation, part of the dream is that you're going to have like so many Constellation cards that every time you play an enchantment, all this crazy stuff's going to happen. But honestly, if you have just one really good Constellation card, maybe a Forgeborn Oreads, right? Suddenly you're going to get a lot of value out of that. Every time you play an enchantment, you're going to be able to do 1 damage to another, creature or even a player. And, there's enchantments throughout this block.
Right, and that's the interesting thing, is that some of them are obvious and some of them are not. The fonts, we've talked about those a little bit earlier. Those are cards that act as regular, like, sorcery speed spells, but they're actually enchantments. They're going to trigger your Constellation. We've also got the Bestow creatures that we've been playing since the block came out. Those are all enchantments. You play those, you bestow, you get a trigger, you get to go off using that. And even some hidden gems that we haven't seen quite as many of. A card that I like to play, Airy Worshippers. When you make one of those birds, that's an enchantment creature. If you start making birds and you have a Constellation creature on the battlefield, you can just go off, and that's not the only one. There's others.
I believe you like to call that value, Marshall.
I do indeed.
Top tip, when you're opening your booster packs, keep those tokens. You're going to need them. BDM, we saw a great match between Conley Woods and Hall of Famer from France, Raph Levy.
Yeah, it was amazing. Conley Woods played a Mnemonic Wall to return Hour of Need to his hand, turned a Mnemonic Wall into a 4/4 Sphinx. Raph Levy's like, I don't think I like that. Curse of Swine, turn that into a boar. Conley's like, more Mnemonic Wall. Get back Hour of Need. Turn my wall and my boar into 2 Sphinxes. It was crazy.
Yeah, I was actually down in the feature match area for that. I was doing spotting, and we have to get the tokens or tell the judges to. And I told the judge, we need some Sphinxes. He came back, we're going to need some boars. Came back, we're going to need more Sphinxes. And he was just running back and forth the whole time.
And let me tell you, it's not just in limited either, because from 1/1 soldiers from Elspeth all the way up to 9/9 Krakens with Kiora, tokens are going to be a big part of your Magic future. It's time for our milestone moment here on Friday Night Countdown. Jamie Park, 3 Pro Tour top 8s in the 90s, the 2000s and the 2010s. 3 decades, 3 Pro Tour top 8s. What an achievement.
How about Reed Duke? His long-expected debut on the Sunday stage.
Nam Sung-wook became the first man from South Korea to make a Pro Tour top 8. Congratulations to him.
But of course, our milestone moment is Pro Tour Hall of Famer Patrick Chapin winning a Pro Tour after 17 years of playing on the circuit. He's got a Juniors Pro Tour top 8, he's got a Type 1 Pro Tour top 8, and he's got 4 other Pro Tour top 8s previous to this, but he's never had that trophy before. And he finally did it. It was an amazing moment. And what's kind of even more amazing to me about that is that he doesn't feel like this was his end game.
So what is his end game?
He viewed that Pro Tour top 8 this weekend as his qualifier to get to the World Championships in Nice. He's like, I have to beat 3 more people, and then I will win an invite to compete in the World Championship. What I've always wanted to do in my career is be a world champion. He came so close in New York in 2007. He made it as far as the finals, and now he has another shot at achieving that title.
Raphael Levy, Shahar Shenhar, Jeremy Desani, Sean McLaren, Lars Dam, and now Patrick Chapin have their seats locked up for the World Championship. But there's more chairs to fill, BPM.
Yeah, join us at Pro Tour Magic 2015 in Portland, Oregon on August 1st, when we will determine all the remaining seats for the World Championship.
But until we meet again on Friday Night Countdown from Ravens Nest Games here in Marietta, Georgia, I'm your host, Rich Hagan, saying bye.
One in the queue.